Hi there, David Collings. I'm a technical director at Arcadis. I've been measuring carbon now for about 20 years. I first published some data back in 2005. We had a bit of a lull in thinking about carbon through the 2007-8 financial crisis, but it's becoming a big issue now. And in terms of message, I think that from the research that I've done, the key message is that to get to net zero, we have to use less material. That is the big thing that we need to look at. And I've been measuring material. I've measured in infrastructure. I've measured in buildings. I've measured in bridges, and there are a number of points that come out from this research, and one of them is that big projects use a lot of carbon, and if we can reduce the number of big projects, it actually has a big effect on the carbon. In that, from the data, when I collect data, what we often find is that the largest few projects have almost 50% the carbon that's being used. The smaller projects, even though there are lots of them, don't add up to the amount of carbon in the larger projects. So reducing carbon in larger projects is one of the things we need to do. And if you saw my lecture on Monday, you will see that we have this issue for space structures, that the amount of material in the larger space structures was very significant compared with the smaller ones. That there was up to 4 times as much per square meter on some of these larger ones than for the smaller timber grid shell type structures. So there's a lesson to be learned there. The other thing really in material is that as structural engineers, we are looking at the space structure. But again, the measurements show that a lot of the carbon in our structures, in our space structures, is actually in the surrounding building, in the foundations and in the associated material. The space structure itself, we are designing, and there's lots of lectures on how we're optimizing these. But I don't believe that we're putting the same amount of effort into optimizing the other bits of the structure. And that's where a lot of the carbon is. I've been doing some research in that I'm doing a talk in 2 weeks' time for the ICE on bridges. And I was looking at some data for predictions in the use of steel and the carbon in steel, which is a large part of what we're doing in space structures. And the net zero, there is no net zero for steel. The increased projected use and offsets any savings. And sort of currently, the best estimate is that we're going to stay roughly where we are. We're not going to get down to net zero for steel. It's a similar issue with concrete, that unless we actually drastically reduce the amount we're doing, then any savings that we get from better electricity that's not driven by coal, or smelting that's not driven by coal but by cleaner electricity, it's all lost. So for me, the message is we have to find a way of reducing the amount of materials that we're using in our structures. And I think that for me is the key message.
Thank you, David.